And he's replacing the hydrant that.
Oh.
The last time.
It's been a while. So how's it?
It's all done, this wall, and then the overhead, the header, the shower curtain,
Right,
but it
right.
couldn't see the wall
So.
where the faucets and everything.
Right, not yet.
Yeah, so tomorrow he'll probably put up the cement, and then he puts that red stuff on.
I'm doing good, thank you.
And then, I mean,
Then he's gonna insulate that.
right.
But that other wall, back wall, is an exterior wall.
Yes,
It works out. So, I mean,
I believe so.
if you're insulated, yeah. But I'd be kind of surprised. Otherwise,
Oh, yeah.
well, that's no problem. It's mostly.
The water wall. Different colors? Yeah. Put on special signs. I mean, we're, I meant to go to the pharmacy to get the chips. They were closed. I didn't know pharmacy was closed on Tuesdays, but I guess so. Pharmacy is. So will you leave Thursday?
Thursday.
You say you get here tomorrow? So, you know, in a way it took the pressure off, because there's no way. This was gonna be.
And they don't
done.
like to
Other-
climb up those stairs anyway, right?
I think they like the privacy.
Oh, right.
The last time they didn't like, because he was getting new.
Oh, right.
And, otherwise I have to clean both areas and let them choose, so now I just.
Yeah.
And then, unless I want to soak them up.
How long do they?
I don't even know, but you know, you hate to ask because it sounds like you don't even want them there when you say, so how long are you gonna be?
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's that part of the packet, so
Session this morning.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was sound like a good crowd, huh?
That's good feeling.
Yeah.
So, I need it.
I guess we had blood draw and
Oh, yeah.
they're saying.
I had never done my labs.
So you,
No.
I know.
Friday. I know. And the way I can go is if they just want to chill, go.
Bringing the crew in.
Yes.
Question.
Yeah, we're in. I know, and Norm had me come over and meet his friend that they were planning. And I said, well, you're together, okay.
That wireless isn't working. Test. It's not working either.
Did, Catherine show you this? Oh, no. That's Gail's painting. It looks like it, it's personality. And then when I commented how amazing it was, she said, well, it actually is, she took a picture of me, so in a sense. And she said, oh, I missed some eyelashes on. But I'm going to leave it tomorrow and pick it up.
Oh,
I feel so bad. Because, well, I want to take it off or something. How big is it? I think it's just 12 hours. And, I was tired of all those things. And then this week, she didn't. She said, I didn't do that by Friday. Hey, Terry, they let anyone in these things, right? It is really impressive to see.
Yeah, it's gonna be-
well, very small.
No.
Yeah. guess I
I'll double check.
there was, I guess,
Test, test.
Martha Moe.
Can you guys hear that? Yeah.
Warm in here this time. I'm in the hip right there. I didn't see you.
Test, test. Yeah, we're good on that. That's perfect.
No, they might have been in the back.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you much.
You guys were. You guys were. Is it too cold? It's not too cold. It's pretty cold in here.
Should still be recording.
Difference.
All right, today is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. The time is now 6 o'clock in the evening. We are here at the Mesilla Town Hall in the courtroom for the regularly scheduled Mesilla Board of Trustees meeting. If you all will join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next order of business is roll call and determination of a quorum. Gloria, if you would, please.
Mayor Hernandez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor.
Present.
Trustee Johnson Burek. Here. Trustee Nevares.
Present.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Trustee Cadena did note that she was not going to be present this evening due to being ill. So we hope that she does get better soon. Next item on the agenda is approval and changes and approval to the agenda.
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Nevares. And the agenda will be approved with unanimous consent as it's been motioned unless there's objection or discussion.
I do have a question, Mr. Mayor, under new business, letter A. Because of the error in the agenda for October 28th and me being out of town on October 30th, was this not on the previous meeting?
It was on the previous meeting in the minutes, not this one. That was not on the previous meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
That one was because it was the one that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
I had a follow-up, second one
Yes.
with letter
Mhm.
Resolution 2025-14 for the rezoning of the case. Why wasn't that addressed at the last meeting?
So that one was the last meeting on that. So that was on that as it was noted in the minutes, it was a reflection of a call that was wrong in the minutes. So the motion actually carried, and as it was an approval, and it wasn't actually denied.
Okay, so you didn't place it obviously you didn't place the resolution on that meeting?
No, that's why you have it in front of you
Okay.
today.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions on the agenda or any necessary changes? As there were questions and discussion, Gloria, if you will roll call vote on the approval of the agenda that was motioned by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, seconded by Trustee Nevares.
Trustee Johnson Burek.
Yes.
Trustee Nevares.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor, the roll call is 3 yes.
Great. Thank you very much for approval of that agenda as it's been proposed. Next item that we have on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda, which includes the BOT meeting minutes for October 30th, 2024, as well as approval for PZH AC SDR business 1282 for 2251 Calle Parian, submitted by Melanie Goodman.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by trustee Nevada, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick. And if there is no discussion or objection, the consent agenda will be approved with unanimous consent. Seeing as there is none, the BOT minutes as well as short-term rental business license 1282 for 2251 Calle Parian have been approved. Next item that we have on the agenda is public input on cases. This is where we'll allow the public to talk or come to the podium, state your name for the record, and give input on the cases that are being heard this evening. So if there's any public input, if you would please step to the podium. And before we get started on that, Gloria, I do want to note that I do have 2 emails that have been received. One from Miss Martha Mulvihill, that can be read into the minutes or put into the minutes. And there's another email here by Ms. Nora Barraza that can also be added to those minutes, or sorry, to the public comments.
Mayor, there was another email, another resident.
Those are the ones that I have.
No.
It was
What's
one
that?
from Mrs. Irene.
Irene Chavez sent an email.
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, it
wasn't
was sent
in
to
that one.
us. I'm trying to see, looks like she did not copy you on it. It was sent Monday, November 11th at 12:56 PM. It was sent to the trustees.
Then if we can have do you have a copy of that?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
If you can forward a copy to
Gloria.
Gloria so that she can add that into the public comment for this meeting as well. Now, public comment. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Catherine Walkinshaw. I live at 2134 Calle de Principal. I'm just commenting briefly on 2 items on the new business agenda, 6A and 6B. Under 6A, I am asking you to approve this. I was on the ad hoc committee that created the short-term rental ordinance that you all will be reviewing and doing a public hearing on November 25th. And under the ordinance that we prepared, a project such as this would be allowed. So it would meet that new ordinance that we're proposing. And then on number 6B, under the request to operate a wine tasting winery, I only heard the most recent planning and zoning meeting, and I wanted to go on record asking for that also to be approved. There's a lot of concern about preserving our greenbelt and our farming around our community, and I really feel like this project goes a long way towards doing that. What I actually see in practice, the way the greenbelt is being managed per our zoning regulations, is instead what's happening is that 5-acre plots are being purchased, trees or fields are cleared, and mega mansions are going up. You just drive down Norte, you can see that all the middle school. In contrast, this project is offering to do something different to maintain the agriculture nature of that. I know that there are some traffic concerns that some residents brought up, and maybe you got emails about that, and I think that should be addressed. But again, I think this goes a long way towards preserving our green belt. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walkinshaw.
Mayor and Board of Trustees, good evening. My name is Susan Kruger, and I would like to comment on new business, which would be 6B. This is a request to operate a winery, a wine tasting, and a social gathering hall in the rural farm zone. at section 18.20.040B, it describes the uses prohibited in the rural farm zone. And it lists commercial uses other than the sale of agricultural products, the majority of which were grown on the property. So I believe that this request, although it's very, sort of exciting or interesting, but I believe that it's not permitted by our code. It doesn't mean that the town should shut down consideration of it, but if the town wishes to consider consideration of it, there would have to be a different approach than the current approach of operating both not only a winery and a wine tasting, but also a social gathering hall. Also, my experience that members of the planning and zoning were really attracted to this idea. And so they sort of let slip by them what the code said. But there was one member of the planning and zoning who voted not to approve this request. And in her explanation, she cited the code and simply tried to explain to her fellow P&Z members that it violated the code. And I was surprised by the lack of knowledge of the code. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kruger. Is there any other public comment this evening? Seeing as there's not any other public comment, we'll move forward. Next item on the agenda is action and consideration, new business. Item A is approval of PZHAC case 061823 with conditions. Mayor Pro Tem Merrick is recusing herself and abstaining from the vote, so she will be leaving the room. All right, so once again, we do have for approval PZHAC case 061823 with condition for 2450 Calle de Principal, submitted by Mr. Felix Armijo requesting approval to construct a 30 by 36 structure on the property for the purpose of operating 2 short-term rental units. This case decision by the PZAC was originally appealed to the BOT. The BOT was to have the case reheard by the PZAC and have the full commission vote on it because it did die on that. And this was reheard in the last meeting, which can be brought up after discussion. If I can have a motion to approve, please.
So,
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor by trustee Nevada, seconded by trustee Johnson Bjork, and I will open it up for full discussion. And on this, I do want to note, with it being reheard by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Eddie, you can attest on this or talk on it as well, but as it is noted in your packet, unanimously by the commission condition that the condition being set that the applicant provide signage with the historic integrity of what stood on the property prior to the new structure going in. Eddie, if you want to give any other background, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I'd like to speak a little bit. We've already went through this case before. I mean, I'm open to ask answer any questions y'all might have based on the construction and, you know, the building and the setbacks and all that. But I really like to focus on going back, being reheard by the commission and why the vote was 5-0. Originally, when it was denied, there was concerns about the property having a historical significance to Mesilla, and also that the main concern was there was not any permits pulled for the filling of that hole or basement, if you want to call. After a discussion with the commission, it was decided that there is no permit required to grade your property above 4%. And that is based on the county and state statute, right? They don't, anything above that, anything above that, they do require a permit. Our code, we do not have a section of our code that regulates landscaping or graveling your property or any such things. And the historical significance part of it, there was discussion about that. I did speak with Carla McWilliams, I believe her last name, up in Santa Fe, and having a discussion with her. And I did have some emails that I supplied the commission that, it is up to the municipality where the location is at to determine what happens, what it is if it is considered historical site or not. Having a structure on the property anymore other than the basement or the hole. We also discussed about, Town of Mesilla regulates exterior parts of the building. Whatever happens on the inside of the building, obviously whatever you were seeing from the street, was the inside of a basement. So therefore, again, combined with all these discussion, did make a condition that they still want to consider that. They still want to remember that property as significant location at one particular time, and that is why they voted 5-0 with the condition to have the applicant put some type of sign or memorabilia of some sort to remember the structure of the past. And I stand by for any questions.
I have a question, because in the board action form, one of the lines says MTC does not regulate infill of holes on property. So this was defined as a hole? What was there before?
Our discussion was, yes, I believe it was defined. I guess we didn't really talk about being defined. Is just considered, that question did not come up, but I did bring up the fact that filling a hole was not required a permit, and I did not have any follow-up questions or comments on that, my statement.
Yeah, because considering what was there before, I would not consider necessarily a hole. It was a structure because it was part of a building.
Correct.
And this part was constructed as a cellar for that particular building. So it would, in my mind, it would be considered a structure.
Okay.
Instead of merely just a hole. And one other question, our code under 11.33. The demolition of a significant or contributing structure within a historic district shall require a permit that includes verification by a qualified architect or certified structural engineer with a background in architecture, preferred that the structure is not repairable or reusable. Was that done? Was there a permit for that?
No, my understanding, the building was not there whenever I started employment here.
I know the building wasn't there, but the cellar was there.
Again, I can, let me just answer part of that. You can ask her, the applicant is more willing. There was no structure on the building. There was, as we saw in the picture, there was a hole on the ground where structure used to be at. If you define that hole as a structure, then therefore it would require to follow that section of the code. So again, it's subjective to your interpretation of the code, and I respect you for that.
And that's the way I see it. It was a hole that was excavated or a hole that naturally occurred on the property. That's a different story. But this was part of a building that existed before. The building was a structure and the cellar was a structure. So we don't know. It says the demolition of a significant or contributing. Is there any knowledge whether this and the cellar that was there had any significant or contributing structure within the historic district?
Not to my knowledge. No.
So I don't know. I mean, that's the way I see it. I see it as a structure. I mean, that would have required having this code applied relating to the demolition.
I think and just to follow up on that, when we look at what's written within the historic register, or the inventory, I should say, of the properties for the town, it does, Eddie, can you recall, does it state in the listing of historic of that specific property, does it state cellar, basement, or is it specifically the structure that was existing above the top of that?
It basically, what I do recall reading it because I read it over and over again, and it does state that there is a structure on the property, and it's very minimal description on the structure itself. It doesn't specifically outline that there's a basement on that property or not. Or in the structure while the structure was standing. It just says it's significant. It used to be a store or something like. Then Wells Fargo took over. Then it burned, and I don't know what happened after that.
Trustees, I think that what we see as well is, if you've noticed, just as an extra comment on that, when you come out of the main doors of the back hallway over here on the left hand side, you see a picture that's hanging right there that is actually of the Bomback store, which was the original storefront that was on that property in specific. So the things you learn across the town that are there, and those are the things that what we look at, in my personal opinion, as I interpret it, as the facade of what was standing there before, because that was what was visibly seen at that point in time, and that's the structure that should be commemorated as it was standing back in the day, but was not there presently to what it is right now.
Mr. Mayor, my understanding, and Eddie, is that it was deemed a historical structure, and that's why it was sent back, because we wanted to go through the state's historical preservation office regarding what we needed to do in order to be able to build. It was a structure. The cellar, Trustee Navarez brings up an excellent point. A cellar is a structure. There were steps in there. And I fully concur with him bringing that up, that we still need to follow the code and go through the proper process.
Yeah,
It's required.
yeah. To answer that, it did go back. It did go back, and then it did make again. I emailed Mrs. McWilliams in Santa Fe, and then I did have a lengthy email that I did submit to the commission. I'm not exactly sure. It should be on your packet. That she does states that if the site is not government or state funded, then they're regulating that structure is up to the municipality itself. And again, when I voted, their reasoning for denying the case was not based on historical significance. It was based on not having a permit for that property whenever it was filled in. Whenever I never saw the basement. Whenever I started working here, it was already covered up. So I don't know, other than the pictures that I supplied, that was as far as I got to any recognition with the whole.
It doesn't matter.
I just,
If it was covered up when you got here or not.
So I guess, Mr. Mayor, my question is, so I can address this issue. How are we? Does he go back and get a permit through me? Is he required, or how will we address this?
well, we're at this stage where they want to build on it, but we don't have, information related to this particular section of the code.
So what do we got to do? I guess is
Email, and there's no email here that I can find in the packet, so I just have questions.
sure, of course.
Before moving forward, it just, I want to make a decision that, to me is clear, and it has the information that is needed to make the right decision.
Correct.
Again, I walked by there for many years, on my way home, and it's, I never considered just a hole. It was, part of a cellar. And there's, the history behind it.
Sure, I understand.
Cellar was.
So what specifically, if I may ask, Mr. Mayor, Trustee Navarez, what specifically would you like to see?
I was gonna see if we could follow some of the elements of the 11 point, was it 30.120? I mean,
It's the building in the historical zone, historical residential zone.
well, it's a historic, yeah.
Paperwork that has to be completed.
The zone is historic commercial. not
Is it? Okay, thank you. I think it says,
It just is within a historic district.
yeah. Oh, there's where it states. That's why I'm concerned, because it does state right in the board action form, STR allowed in HR zone. That's where I got it. It says at the top, it's zoned historical commercial, but then when you go into comments, it said it's HR. So that's, I knew I read it somewhere.
And under section D of the same section, it says, if a demolition permit is issued prior to the demolition, it should be documented with photographs, sketch plans, and a brief historical description. Do we have that?
No, I don't have that.
I'm just reading from.
No, that's good. This is good information. I appreciate that.
I just don't see it as a demolition, honestly, because when you look at the actual definition of demolition, it's a process of safely and efficiently dismantling, destroying, or razing a structure or building. And those demolition is necessary for many reasons that include structural integrity, new construction, or repurposing. If there were a structure that were existing on the property, physical structure that were upright with walls, then definitely that would be considered a demolition, given that there. But there again, it's to interpretation on that. Are there any potential conditions to be set on this case as it's been presented?
To set a condition to get the required documents.
If we had something to go by, some other documentation.
I guess, again, me trying to work with the applicant or any applicant, what would the board need for an approval of this application?
Well, look at it.
To me, like you mentioned, to me, huh?
I read from it.
Okay.
It's just that I think the demolition should have been pursued regardless, because it was a structure. I mean, it wasn't above ground, but at one time there was an above ground building. The structure, it was made by somebody. I think we just need to, we need to look at buildings within the historic district and before we consider demolition or any other work, there would be some following of this, if, there's some documentation. Like I said, if a demolition permit is issued prior to the demolition, the structure shall be documented with photographs, sketch plans, and a brief historical description for the record.
Okay.
My question
Anything else?
is, because here is a staff.
No, I know exactly.
Can be accomplished,
Yeah. Well, I would definitely have to do some research. I don't know. Again, I'm a little unfamiliar, so it's kind of hard for me to kind of like give my opinion on certain of your questions or concerns because I wasn't here to see it. I can just go off of again, I called it a hole on the ground, but it's subjective, and I do respect that. But if we want to proceed with conditions, then obviously, whatever requirements, either the photographs, maybe he has some photographs, the applicant has photographs before he fills in, what kind of condition the structure was in, what do we need to do through the P&Z to be able to fulfill that demolition part of that code so we can move forward from that.
I would like to see something, that would at least some semblance. That
Sure.
follows certain elements of this particular.
Okay,
If it easy, if we had gone through the process, we would already have that information in the record.
okay.
So are you requesting information for staff to pull and to provide for you on this case? Because here's, in essence, here's options. Because there is a motion on the floor for approval of this case. So with that, we move forward with the motion as it's been approved or been motioned for approval. There can be conditions that are set by the board, or it can be postponed for staff to fully investigate, depending upon information that may be needed.
I can't speak with for trustee Johnson Berg, but I would rather table it and see what you can come up with regarding, what I said for
Okay.
instead of vote. I mean, it's either voting yes or no right now, or, or conditions. I'd rather have the information. I just want some kind of satisfactory response to the inquiry.
Sure.
And I'm basing it on what I'm reading from the code.
Okay,
And I don't know. if
Noted.
that was discussed in the planning and zoning code, this particular section.
well, imagine, again, if we are going to consider it a structure and a historical site, it definitely go through the process of the workshop and getting the appropriate, the permit first, and then obviously before the agenda. So there's a process for that route.
Just that in the historic zone, we should, the property owner should understand that there should be some kind of a process before they do major.
I
work
understand.
on the side.
Okay,
And so,
I'll do my,
So trustee, is that a formal motion for,
a motion to table for staff to.
and just for clarification, it would be a postponement, not a table, because a table is reheard by the end of the meeting.
All right, a postponement of the case.
And can you state the specific things that you would like staff to?
I would like
That's fine.
staff to look at the code 11.33.120, the first paragraph, and then letter D, the demolition permit is issued, but is there any of this that exists to support?
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion on review as it's been noted? Seeing as there is none, sorry.
I was going to bring up, and actually in my comments at the end of the meeting, but since we're discussing this, after the last meeting, not October 30th, not that meeting, the meeting before this was discussed, because I was bothered when in the next couple of days following that, and I'm speaking on my behalf, I think was an error made when we sent this back to P and Z in order to have the full vote. I don't recall in the years that I've been up here that we did such, and I didn't catch it, and that's why I'm saying I'm responsible. But back, because there wasn't a full commission, the door for any case that comes up, and we choose selectively to send something back because we know planning and zoning does not always have a full quorum. And I was mostly bothered too because of the perception and the appearance of perhaps favoritism or preferential treatment in this case, because it did involve a fellow trustee. So I was going to bring that up at the end of the meeting during comments, but I thought I'd bring it up now. So thank you, Mayor.
Well, and trustee, to address your comments, as you've noted there, and it's a shame that you weren't able to make it to the last meeting, because in the last meeting, and you can definitely review the recording online, I did state specific parts of the code in there that specifically state why were we doing it and why we have the right to do it. And just because we haven't done it in the past, which we have, when I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission and I was chairman, there were several things that were sent back from the Board of Trustees to be
But not
re-reviewed.
regarding a specific case. And had there not been an error in
But
the
there-
agenda, I would have been present.
There was, but at any case, at any rate, there were specific notes in that that were given on that. And I just want to note that specifically. And that's the reason why it was remanded in specific with that request for that, because the board, and I think that's the most important part to remember, is that at the end of the day, the Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommending board. So when
Right.
they are not fully able to provide a recommendation for or against to the Board of Trustees, that's where we have an issue. How can we move forward with due process for our applicants if something dies and we don't receive a formal denial from our commission? And that just because it dies from a lack of vote is not a formal vote by any means. And there's all of that is provided in that. I think that that's the thing to take into consideration, and that's why it was really sent back, is to have that formal recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, just as it's stated within our code. So I hear you and I understand. It's just one of those things that you weren't wrong by any means. You did not do the wrong thing. We did the right thing in getting that taken care of, and I appreciate you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate your explanation.
The one thing that I did forget as well as back to the case at point with this is we do have Ben here. I'm sorry, attorney. So he can always chime in if you want to hear anything from legal as well, as far as it pertains to that. So I don't know if that's something that the trustees would like.
Well, at this point, I want to see what Mr. Salazar can provide.
Will do.
I mean, I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. So the floor is for postponement on case PZHC case 061823 with the condition as it's been set by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as there's not any further discussion, Gloria, roll call vote, if you would please. It's a motion for postponement, yeah. So it would be the original motion on the floor.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that postponement and moving forward with staff direction on that. Okay. So we'll just wait a few minutes for Mayor Pro Tem to rejoin the meeting. Pro Tem. Next up on the agenda is approval of PZHAC case SUP case 061909 for 320 West University submitted by Sylvia De Andrea, requesting approval to operate a winery, wine tasting, and social gathering hall in the RF zone.
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Nevades. Eddie, if you would give components of the case, please.
Yeah, this is, again, this is cases number 061909. The address is 320 West University, was submitted by Sylvia De Andrea. I was requesting approval for a special use permit under section 18.20.030, section A, cottage industry. Mrs. De Andrea has not purchased the property yet. She is looking looking for approval to a request to see if she's able to do something similar, something such as a winery in the town of Mesilla before she invests her money in the property. So she requested that we do process a hearing with a special use permit. Mrs. De Andrea is the owner of a restaurant close to our municipality just outside of our jurisdiction, Luna Rosa Winery. She does have an extensive experience with wine. I believe she was the third or fourth generation family that has had experience with wine all the way down to roots in Italy. They do have a vineyard in Deming where they do most of the growing and the processing of their wine. Mrs. De Andrea is looking to purchase a property at 320 West University. According to Doña Ana County parcel map, this property is 6.2 acres, 6.28 acres. It is the last parcel inside the Messias jurisdiction on University Avenue, which is also New Mexico State Road 101. It is a rural farm zone. Mrs. De Andrea is applying for a special use permit before she invests the time and money. The property has a residential house. The plans, if approved, either herself or her daughter will be living there. A family member will be living on that property. And there is a detached metal building on the property that is where she's looking to do her cottage business of packaging and wine tasting on the property. Also, in the future, she also would like to add that she would like to a short part, especially the front part of the property there. Some of those trees are in pretty bad shape, I'm told, and she would like to put a small vineyard there to do a small processing winery. They call micro wineries, according to Google, and so that way, eventually, maybe she could get to the point where she can have a Messias. I don't know, Messias first wine. With a Messia label on the wine bottle of some sort. My understanding, there is a lot of wine history in the area. I'm not sure if she's here tonight or not. Probably not. But she did get an extensive presentation on the wine area, location in the area, and the significance it has in Messia in the past. And I found that fairly interesting. For our historic. For the town being historic, I think to add to that would be a good benefit to the town. Being at the end of the jurisdiction, which is on University, I think the concern for the amount of traffic, the noise, or any such thing like that will be not as big as it would be, again, in the center of an RF zone. Also, there is concerns about conserving the green belt, right? And we did talk about the green belt. She's not doing anything to destroy the trees or any agricultural use of the property. And I think finding a future owner of not only that property, any properties in the RF zone, it's always best to find an owner or a buyer that's going to use that property as an agricultural use. As Mrs. Trustee Johnson Burek here mentioned a while back, people are clearing out the trees. I believe you did mention it. If not, I apologize. But in RF zone, they are being the trees are clearing out, and homes are being built and such. So it is it's a good to see a buyer wanting to make agricultural use of the property, and also be able to bring something to Messias, such as maybe Messias first wine or some history with wine as well. Under this section of this code, the cottage industry, the cottage industry has evolved since the code was codified. My understanding, in 2021, I did bring up to the commission. We did have a work session on this as well. I didn't bring it up to the commission. And in 2021, there was a law passed on the food cottage industry when COVID was around, and there was the Homemade Food Act, which is listed on your packet. And basically, what it is, that gives the owners of the property, the right to a certain limited amount of processing of food for the purpose of doing business. Being that in our code in the RF zone, it states that cottages are allowed with a special use permit. I feel that this application or this request falls under this code based on the new and evolving cottage industries that we're having today versus when, in the past where the cottage industry was known more for the, raw materials and the weaving of baskets and such. But anywho, that's why we are here now. I accepted his application and I wanted to present it to the commission and the trustees for consideration. I stand by.
So we're open for discussion. Okay.
Yes.
And bear with me, I have several questions and comments and trying to understand how I get what you're saying, newly evolving cottage industries, but unfortunately, our ordinance does not reflect that. So you can't interpret and you can't go off because it's evolving, we have to go off our ordinance. So how did you get a winery and a special event center under a cottage industry?
Well, I did a lot of research on Google and the Webster Dictionary, and certain websites. There is a reference sheet that they're all right here. It says references. This is where all my research did, my investigation did. Is a winery considered a cottage industry? The proposed winery that Mrs. De Andrea is requesting approval for is listed under the micro winery industry. And if you package, grow the grapes here and such, under the cottage industry, and in our code, with the special use permit, it does say which kind of cottage industries. Which could you give me a reference on which one? And give me my code book.
Well, and real quick before I lose this train of thought. And this is why I have all these questions. I'm trying to understand how you're incorporating all this and how P and Z approved it. Because in the references, you said for a micro winery that's one of the goals.
That's one of the things that she is wanting to know if she can do. There's various things that she's
According
proposing.
to the reference you listed, micro winery is simply a winery without its own vineyard. The owner must purchase grapes from suppliers instead of growing his or her own. While the micro wineries can use some of the same types of equipment as the larger wineries, the size of the equipment is smaller, so it has to be purchased.
Correct.
So how is she gonna ship the wine from Deming over here?
It's
You said
possible.
she was gonna have a.
Well,
vineyard to
that's
produce wine.
keep in mind her request. She wants to know what she's able to do on this property. Obviously, if something that a micro winery states that you can't grow your own winery, then it's something that the applicant is willing to do is purchase the grapes from somewhere else and make her own wine there.
But that's
Right.
not listed in here. That's what I'm saying. You're coming from all angles, trying to pull stuff out of thin air to make this go and not follow the ordinance.
Okay.
The ordinance, you're talking about manure. What was it you mentioned in the work session, stockpiling manure? And it's outdated and all, this is rural farm. It's not commercial zoned. So rural farm, you are gonna be stockpiling manure.
So a micro winery or a winery in general, where would it be best located at? That if it needs to be a business zone, so a winery is only allowed in Mesilla if it is in the commercial zone.
Yes, according to our ordinance.
Again, it's subject to interpretation. I respect that. And then again, that's just wanted to bring up.
Sorry, this is all over the page. It said, going back, I'll do page by page, board action form. Again, the metal building is being proposed to host a wine tasting, packaging, and social gathering. Again, I don't see it as a small, there you go, maybe a small scale micro winery. And the cottage industry, and I'll go back to when I pull up when I get to that part of the ordinance. I mean, mostly cottage industries are arts and crafts, personal services, online businesses. That's how it's evolving. Repair and maintenance. Another small manufacturing business typically operated from the home or small workshop. Members of a close-knit community evolved with the artisan things, selling jams, garment making. And like you had mentioned that, it has evolved from that. That was from the Industrial Revolution. Food cottages, meaning food made in a home kitchen for sale. The last sentence, the description covers baked goods and most types of candy, dry goods, pastries, jams, jellies, granola, and non-alcoholic beverages. That's in your board action form. Let's see, what else? You said, and you alluded to this, that wine is a huge part of Messia's history. Where is that documentation? Because truly, I had not heard of that.
I have
From
not.
the Wild West, so I had heard of that and the
Yeah, again,
saloons rather, and all that, but where is it a huge part of Messia history?
I was hoping for the applicant to be here to give that presentation, as she did with the commission. Again, I found it very intriguing, very interesting. I do not have the facts or any information regarding, the history of the wine here in Mesilla.
So then, my next question is, the tasting room will be operated by appointment only, right? Okay. And the application states to help with the overflow
Correct.
of the restaurant for people wanting to taste wine.
Correct.
So do people go to taste the wine at Luna Rosa and she's too busy? And then she says, go over
Sure.
here?
It's a good question. Sometimes,
Appointment only?
yeah, sometimes her restaurant, she mentioned that has a larger group of people that want to have some sort of gathering there at the restaurant, and she's not able to accommodate them. So to include with the micro winery and the wine tasting, she was wanting for me to know if that was be allowed or not.
Okay, so then.
The appointment and the set will be kind of like reservations you have it at the restaurant, and if you can't fit a party of 20 or 30 or 40, then it would be held at the winery, at the trip.
Again, special event center, where does that come under a cottage industry?
Again, that was just something that she proposed. If it's not allowed, then obviously it's not allowed. But I do feel that the cottage industry is what made me want to present it to y'all for consideration.
Next question. As you stated in the work session, Mesilla Town Code 18.20.20, sorry, allows you to stockpile manure. Then you state quarters for farmhands, and then going to the future where we are nowadays. These are a few examples of how unrealistic parts of this code is and why we need to be subjective to our modern times until we amend our ordinance to best meet our town's needs. Well, until those ordinances are in place, we can't do that. Still hasn't decided how she will, who will be staying there. I'm obviously very concerned that we are not following our ordinances. So then Commissioner Gallegos asked if he could, the wine tasting is by appointment only. And Commissioner Gallegos asked if he could purchase a bottle of wine, or not purchase, if he could sample wine at this location. And she said no, she would send him to Luna Rosa.
But that was the comment. That was because he was by himself. That's the event or social gathering request is not meant for normal traffic, just for 1 or 2 people to go out in there and taste.
So it's not a wine tasting. It is an event venue. If he's only one
With
person,
part-
what if you can't make an appointment to taste wine? If you're one person, you're gonna be sent to Luna Rosa?
Again, not my.
Everything about this is, yeah. Let's see, my essay asked about the kitchen. In this part of the rural farm zone that you submitted, permitted uses, you highlight a roadside stand offering for sale only farm products, the majority of which are grown on the premises, provided that the stand shall be removed during any time when not in use. I didn't draw any clear connection between that and this permit. Okay, here it is. Commissioner Gallegos asked if you wanted to go and taste a bottle of wine, would I have to make an appointment? The applicant said no, you would stop by my restaurant. Yet she's saying she's going to have wine tasting by appointment only.
Correct.
That's not with the permit.
Again, this permit has a variety of ideas of what can she do with the property. Now, if that is something that is struck out from the approval, then she wants to make the most out of her property. If she wants to say there's no wine tasting, there's no venues or sorts allowed on that property, that's okay. I'm not here to promote that, other than I do feel that having a cottage or a vineyard in the town of Mesilla is an awesome idea. It's an awesome idea. Now, how do you do it? Obviously, there are going to be conditions of how we can do something like that. I think it would be great for Missy. I do think it would attract a lot of people, especially with the history that I've heard for her talk about it. Now, if a venue is not allowed, then that's okay. That's something I want to bring back to the applicant and say, okay, yeah, you can do this, you can do this. These are if you want to do that, this is how you were able to do what you can, but not everything that you want to do on it. She's just trying to, okay, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? And that's why I'm put this package together. So I'm okay with, I am not here trying to promote or something outside of the
But I
code.
think you are though, Eddie.
But
because then-
Trustee Johnson Burek, please. One thing that I want to note just real quick is that I think a lot of the questions that you're asking specifically are for the applicant, and applicant pointed. And Eddie has helped go through this process, but he is not the applicant. So I mean, those should be specifically directed towards the applicant.
Okay, then I
in
will-
that, I think that when we look at the specific use of the property, that's where we're looking at what we have here in specific is how it's been presented by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then those questions that are relatable to the code, so on and so forth, which are some of the questions that you have been presented, which I.
refrain and ask for
And that's the other thing to take into consideration is if you do want to have the applicant present to answer those specific questions, and we can always make that happen if that needs to happen.
They should have been present. most of the time they are. Okay, I'll reframe my questions to directly what Eddie has stated and his part of the process. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, trustee.
So, you wrote, the site for the use shall be no smaller than 5 acres per the code. So you wrote the 500-foot requirement is not practical because the standard is 5-acre plot with all equal sides. Again, the 500 feet is ordinance and it's not.
Yeah, we talked about that. That was actually, whenever we did the workshop, that brought up, one of the commissioners made a very good point about the 100 feet, and it talked about agriculture industry. Now, that's the section of the agriculture industry. After the workshop, I went back and I did some more research, and I couldn't understand why a winery or micro winery will be considered to be an industry. So I went back and I did some more Googling, and I tried to get to the intent of the code, and it was found that the application for a micro winery or wine or vineyard or wine or even vineyard will fall more under a cottage part of our code other than the agriculture industry part. Agriculture industry would be, after looking back, will be something more like a cotton gin, or much bigger, more buildings, more noise, pollution and those types of things. So again, after reviewing it, it would be more considered more of a cottage. It would fit better under the cottage part of our code than the actual industry, because there's not going to be stacks. There's not going to be a large amount of equipment or noise or any such thing.
And then 18.20.040, uses prohibited, commercial uses other than the sale of agricultural products, the majority of which were produced on the property. Those are uses not permitted. And then that brings me to the research you did, the Homemade Food Act from the New Mexico Environmental Department. What this was, like you mentioned, COVID, and this is primarily why they did this, but it also applies to fundraisers. Someone cooking food in their kitchen to help fundraise for a booster club. I don't know if, again, it says, you see the food restrictions, so how the applicant, again, that's a question for the applicant, is going to comply with this Homemade Food Act. I don't think it's applicable to this case for a special venue, because you're going to have food catered in, but it's very strict as to what you can and cannot allow. And again, it states no alcohol. No alcohol beverages may be produced or at a private farm, ranch, or residence. Again, it's rural farm, it's not commercial. And they talk about homemade items, references. Again, the owner must purchase grapes from suppliers for a micro winery, which conflicts with what is stated on the permit. And I think I have more questions and comments, but for now, I think that's the majority, the bulk. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for answering those questions that you put.
Trustee Nevadas.
I have a commentary and maybe questions, but I don't see how we can move forward with the information that's in this packet, move forward tonight, because I think it seems to be all over the map information. I want to see, a pretty much a straightforward what the use will be. If it's a cottage industry, because in the permit itself, it says proposed to purchase property and operate a wine tasting, winery, packaging, and social gathering. That's a variety of things that are being requested in the, or listed in the permit. On the attachment, it says the application for the special use permit is driven by a demonstrated need for a larger setting to host community and family events, which are existing Luna Rosa winery and pizzeria facilities. Need more space to accommodate adequately. So it's focusing on that. It's really more of a kind of an event center. The cottage industry is if you're looking at the definitions, this is a small manufacturing operation, one of the definition is. Now, if it was listed here that they were going to construct a small operation where they process the grapes and produce wine, maybe as for education of the public and they come and observe that, I could see the connection, but there's nothing here to connect that to the request. The other one is they did list future plans include boutique vineyard replacing the select pecan trees, which, would go to the agricultural, but you're going to have perhaps a small vineyard there that you can use in the future. But I'd like to see that that's part of the, not for future, but it would be done immediately if property is purchased, so that we understand that they're committed to do this.
Sure.
But if you look at the attachments, it's a variety of things. I just don't know what the applicant is planning, with respect to a cottage industry. If there was more specifics as to how that's going to apply. And I know that I'm just making a comment. Because
No. I think this.
I would feel more comfortable if that information was before me. When I've gone to municipal league training, they say, look at the information before you. This is what you have to make your decision. You don't speculate. Don't assume. And this leads a person to assume a lot of things. So, that's why I made the comment early on. I don't know if we can move forward given what's in this particular package, because it to me, I just can make a reasonable. I cannot see a reasonable roadmap. And maybe it's just me, but that's the way I evaluate things.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, if I may, again, this was a unique application because, she hasn't purchased a property yet. And as a business owner, she wants to know what kind of avenues is able to be used of that property. Again, that's why there was multiple, with the understanding that, she might not be able to do one or the other or whatnot. I would like to the trustees to kind of like tell me what it would require or what they can and can't do. Tasting room out of the question. That's out of the question. You can have a if she wants to purchase this property, this is the only thing by code, my interpretation that she were able to only do these kinds of things, right? I came out and I presented that she asked me to present what is she able to do with this property. I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. But a lot of the times, what can we do to say yes right now? What can we do to say no? And again, I think having a winery in Mesilla will be a very good business in Mesilla. If it's this one or it's another one, but I think if we have our own winery, I think it would be good.
Yeah, and to further your comment on that, I kind of agree with you. This is a good concept. It's just not presented in a way that I feel comfortable saying a yes to at this point.
Yeah.
If she had said we're going to do mini production and bottling of wine here, and we're going to try to educate, and show, it's a demonstration. And they definitely said we are going to put in grapes for future use in our wine production.
Okay.
All of this is connected. Right now, it's just a disjointed kind of request, and that's not reflecting on you. It's what I'm doing this here. And the way I look at things, because I've done workplace investigations for 25 plus years, and I have roadmaps, and I want to see different things as I move along there to make a decision on that I can feel comfortable with. And in this case, I can. And especially you don't even have, the applicant is not even here to respond to these. So that's why I'm saying I have a difficult time with the idea that we're going to move forward with a yes or no. I like the concept, but there's just nothing here that I can feel comfortable voting for, or I mean, right now, it's more voting against it because there's no concepts that I can grasp. This is what's gonna be proposed. But I think if she had been here, she would have been able to hear me.
Sure. Because that's what I'm gonna go ask her, exactly what you would be asking her. So I kind of feel like I'm caught in the center,
And I think, you probably think along the same lines because you're evaluating these things. So this is just a hodgepodge of ideas and then nothing that I can really say
Sure.
yes or no to.
Understood?
Mayor Pro Tem.
So sorry, I sound like crap, but, so the application before us is asking exactly what? To start the winery.
The main reason why she's here is because she wants to sell wine, tasting in that aspect. That's how she came to me. I want to make a tasting room. I want to, I've never been to a wine tasting thing, so I don't know exactly what that entitles. Okay, but that was the main thing. And I said, well, let me look at the code. You know what I mean? I said, okay, the only thing that I see in the code that could be referenced to something what you're proposing is a cottage. At first, I thought it was industrial agriculture, but it went the cottage part of it to where if you were to package, create, build that product there, I feel it would fall under that section of your code, and that is why that's included along with the wine tasting, social gathering room or however you want. So in social gathering or a wine tasting, is there a room or that you just go and you do like going to a bar and say, I don't know, I don't understand.
Where you go.
I'm sorry?
It depends where you go.
Okay.
But from my understanding and reading the minutes, what they were trying to explain is when the one commissioner asked if I wanted to taste wine, would I be able to go? And she said no. She said no because you are an individual. You are not a group.
Correct.
And the intention is to have a group. That's what I understood, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Secondly, a micro winery, those terms change. A micro winery is a winery that produces less than 5,000 gallons of wine annually. So it depends on what you're doing. Those terms have changed, just like restaurant industry names have changed. The way we do things change. Our restaurants constantly change. What we're allowed to do, not allowed to do, sanitation-wise, production-wise, all that changes federally throughout the years, every year, all the time. So my concern is that we're asking questions of what if that we will never have the answer to because we're not the federal government and we're not the people that oversee all of that. So a microbrewery might mean something in 5 years, but those limitations are something that we have to fix. In our code book, and I understand what Trustee Johnson says, how it's hard to move along with the times when our code book does say something else. However, that's what we have to do. There's no one to really work on this besides you getting our code up to date. I don't see anyone volunteering to help do that either. So now we're having to adjust to the times and they're coming rapidly. So now we have to make sure that the people who do want to preserve the Greenbelt, and that's a huge thing. I've never wanted to get rid of the Greenbelt. That should be preserved. We have to find a better way to do it. And a lot of people don't have the knowledge of what farming takes and how that's moving forward. And attending municipal leagues and meetings and all the time and seeing how much water we don't have in New Mexico, how Clovis isn't going to have water in 3 years. That's a concern, not just for the state, but federally. So you have somebody before you that is asking to look at a different way of doing something to preserve what we are aiming towards the same goal. And application after application, depending on who it is and what it is and whether someone likes it or not, is whether we deep dive into questions, finding why we shouldn't approve it. So I think that we really need to look at this, and if there's conditions that need to be set and we need to talk this through a little bit more and what she's going to do and have a clear path like Trustee Nevares likes, that's fine. But the goal is to help our residents as a whole, not to deny people and say, no, well, it doesn't say it in there, that doesn't work. It's a term that's antiquated. So how do we move forward doing that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that myself, anytime that someone steps into my office, when it's not allowed, then there's many people that don't come to this meetings because I turn them around. It's just not allowed. But again, just like Mayor Pro Tem Merrick mentioned, the times are changing. I think about everything, not just this application. I'm thinking about Mesilla, what's the best for Mesilla. There's a lot of lots I drive out there. There's a lot of lots out there that doesn't have anything on them. Or there are a lot of trees are in bad condition and such. There's new generation that's coming up. They don't want to be farmers anymore. We talk about, I'm not talking about growth right now. I'm thinking, how do we sustain what we have now, and so that it doesn't continue. I've been to towns where they become ghost towns, because I know they're very avid about holding their traditional ways, and that's all good. I mean, that's all good. That's what we see us here, the history, and I love it. I love the history. I love the greenery, the trees. That's why I'm out here. I live in Las Vegas and Phoenix, and I live all these other, but I love the small communities I stitch, and I would like to help keep them that way. But at the same time, for one, we need to keep up with the code, with the ordinances. If federal passes or states passes, it is our responsibility, all of ours, including myself, all the way up to the governing board, to make sure that we're up to speed on these changes. Because if not, I've spoken with the attorney. That's why one of the reasons why he's here is because I asked for his opinion. He said, well, because right now our code states is cottages. Cottages is interpretation of what's going on at the present, not what was at the past. So if somebody applies for something under that section, not just cottages, any part of our code, right? That we need to make that a consideration, right? Now, I understand there's certain things like, the venue or party hall or social gathering. If that does not relate, then again, you're all subjective to it, and I'm just presenting it to you. I don't all want you, I do want you to know that I respect each one of your position. That's why there's a governing board. That's why there's 5 of you, right? So whatever the trustees at the end of the day decides, I'm sure that's going to be for the best of Mesilla at the end of the day. But I strongly believe that I think a winery in a farm zone would not only help preserve the agricultural use of the property, but it also will create some kind of, people with tourism, people will come and say, especially if there's history behind this winery, you can go in there, maybe like a museum in there. So I don't know. There's just ideas, and I would just want to ask the trustees to think about how can we help not just Mesilla, this applicant, to getting approved, not just finding a ways on how am I going to get him declined.
And I'm not seeking to have this decline.
Oh, no, I'm not speaking about, I'm not.
Package. I mean, I understand all you're saying about the positive aspects, and I'm not against that. But I would like to have linkages to a cottage industry and how that's going to be accomplished.
That's great.
And really that they would move on planting grapes immediately to kind of save.
I'm glad you want that. I mean, that's okay with me.
But
I think that what we need, just as it's been discussed, is a lot of the questions are pointed towards the applicant who is not present, and I think that that's a big part of what part of this big discussion needs to be. Before I personally make a recommendation, I do want to give a few notes on my own accord as well on this, because I think it's important, since the board has already asked questions and given comments about the case, and I'd like to give some as well from my standpoint. So, we are as a community, we're constantly talking about preservation of our historic district, of our commercial district, of our green belt, and our farm zone. And here we have a property that lies within our current farm zone, in a 5-acre property that has pecan trees on it presently for an agricultural use. There is a building and a home, as well as a structure in the fashion of a barn, some sort, that is on the property itself. I think when we think about this property and its use in the past, just alone, and what's been approved in the past should be taken into consideration, because if you recall previously, prior to this property going or potentially going up for sale, this property was used as a church. And that church was approved by the Board of Trustees back then
Mm.
as an allowable use, special use at that given point in time. Not necessarily allowed by the code. There again, working with the applicant at the time to try to make things work. And I think that that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, because that's exactly what staff is trying to do here, is trying to work with the applicant with the code as it's been presented. Now, going back to the property as it is, let's just say theoretically, and of course the applicant isn't here to answer questions, but which we can look at that. But let's say theoretically the applicant wanted to tear out all of the pecan trees and put in all but nothing but vines in there for wine. That is an agricultural use and an agricultural product that's being grown on the property, is it not? So I think that when we look at that and the potential of what that is and how that is used, and then if we look at it further into the interpretation of our code, and we look at how things are being, if they're being produced on the property, then is a winery allowed within the property if they're producing the grapes on the property? Can they produce and bottle and manufacture wine within the property? I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. When we look at a wine or a roadside stand, no specific necessary clarification on what a roadside stand is per se. I mean, we all kind of have an idea on what that may be, but there's no clarification on whether it's a cart, something that's portable, something that's temporary, something that is permanent. If it is a four-walled structure, if it is a three-walled structure, if it only has a roof over it, maybe it doesn't have any of that. Maybe it's just a table that's set up on the side of the road. I think these are things that have to be taken into consideration for what is being sold and how a property is potentially being utilized in the future. When we look at it as a whole, if we have a tasting room that is allowed potentially, or I wouldn't necessarily say an event center or gathering hall, but a tasting room allows for product that's being produced on site to be tasted within the property. And I think those are questions that can be pointed towards the applicant to find out more information on that. And I think that we should be finding out that information. But what's to limit that? And to say that I have, or the applicant has, I say I, because I think of it in terms of that the applicant has a tasting room that's on the property, but as long as it falls within the confines of the amount of people that are allowed within the existing structure, what's the issue with that? You know, there was previously, as I stated, a church in that area before that I'm sure had 100 people that the fire marshal approved to be in that structure before that. I highly doubt that would be the case in the event of a place for people to sit down and to have libations, if that's the case, and tasting product that's being produced on the property. But I think that that is something that should be taken into consideration. And we do have the potential of the fire marshal who would be dictating the amount of the occupancy that is allowed within the said structure. And all of that is taken into consideration. But more so, in the event of what we have in the case that's specifically in front of us, is we have an application that is a property that has not necessarily been purchased by a person just quite yet. This is a person who is interested in purchasing this property and maintaining somewhat of the integrity of the property as it is there in a rural farm zone and trying to keep it to what it is already. But what we don't do in this is, if we consider this or don't consider this, then of course this person's not going to move forward with this by any means. And that's why this case, I think, comes to you like it is right now as the proverbial, what can I use with this property or do with this property specifically? And that's where we need to provide that direction, because we have not provided that direction in the past. And I think that's extremely important that we do help guide our applicants and our residents and people in the future and look at the use of property and maintaining the integrity of what's there presently. With that being said, I would personally recommend that we postpone this and actually make the motion to postpone this case to be heard with the applicant actually being present to answer questions that were specifically pointed towards the applicant and not to staff. So,
Mr. Mayor, however, I don't know. I mean, I know it's beneficial to have her here. She should have been here. But
trustee, I did make a motion on the floor. So is there a second to the motion?
Second.
And then now that there's a motion by myself as well as a second for postponement, we will open it up for discussion.
Yeah.
Sorry, and continue discussion.
thank you. So, I mean, the whole application and even her explanation still is, Trustee Nevada said it perfectly, all over the place. How is having her here going to change what is being presented to us in writing that we have to make a decision on?
As it was stated, I think that there can be more pointed direction on the specifics either set in condition if it is moved towards approval, or just letting the applicant know specifically, we don't agree with this. But the applicant should be here to fully defend and to answer questions that are due with their case. When they're not here to actually talk about their case, that's where we have issues. And I think that that's where that we give our residents and our potential business owners the opportunity to have that and to actually defend that, whether it be in favor or not. Doesn't make a difference. There is no yes or no, solid yes or no. It's just we need to have the information. I mean, you asked quite a few questions, Trustee Johnson Bjork, about the specifics that would and should only be answered by the applicant, should not be answered by staff, because staff can only assume what's the direction that the applicant wants to go. We can set stipulations and conditions of what the direction can be, will be, and will not be if it is moved forward. Otherwise, it doesn't.
Then we probably shouldn't have had it on the agenda if we knew that the applicant was not going to be present.
Well, there was no way for us to know that the applicant wasn't going to be present though, right?
Correct.
So I don't know why she's not here, but
I know either.
at any rate, we do have a motion on the floor for postponement. Is there any further discussion?
Again, I think this is a great concept, but it would be great, and as the mayor stated, that we could at least provide that information as to what we would like to see for the use of that property.
Sure.
Like I said, and if she hears it and she agrees, I mean, it would make me feel, that I can make a decision. Right now, it's just
It's up in the air.
very difficult. So, thank you.
So would we talk about what we would like to see?
I think we just, with the postponement, we
just
have
wait.
the applicant present to answer the questions as it's been presented, because there's a lot of questions specific for the applicant. Okay. So there is a motion on the floor by myself, seconded by Trustee Nevades, for postponement of PZHE's case, SUP case 061909. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as there is none, Gloria, if you will roll call vote, please, on postponement.
Mayor Pro Tem Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek,
No.
Trustee Nevada,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Mayor roll call is 2 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, the motion carries with the postponement of the PZHAC SUP case 061909 for the applicant to be present to answer questions. Next up on the agenda is approval of PZHAC case 061913 with conditions for 2342 Calle Arroyo submitted by Julie Fitzsimmons, requesting approval to restore a structure on the property. A work session was scheduled according to Mesilla Town Code preservation requirements, and this is in the historic residential zone.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, seconded by Trustee Nevadas. We will open it up for discussion. Do we need Eddie to give background on this?
I think a good write-up was provided on the Querencia Mi Mesía. We provided quite a bit of information on the project and even timelines and things like that. So it's good information. That's good. I think Mr. Taylor deserves big thanks for that.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing as there is none, Gloria, will you roll call vote, please, with the motion on the floor for approval from Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, seconded by Trustee Nevadas?
Yes.
Yes.
Bless you.
Mayor Pro Tem Merrick,
Yes.
Mayor, the roll call is 3 yes.
Great. Thank you very much for approval of PZHAC case 061913 with the conditions as they've been set by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Next up is approval of Resolution 2025-10 concerning FY 2024-25 budget adjustment number 1.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, seconded by Trustee Nevadas. We will open it up for discussion.
Did you want me to present and explain why, what we're doing?
Yes, if you would, please.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? I think Mayor Pro Tem Merrick and Trustee Johnson Burek were on the board when we borrowed the money from the general fund to cover the shortfall in that. And then ARPA was gonna cover the matches. We're just paying it back since we're in a good shape. And the rest is self-explanatory, okay?
Any questions? There is none. If we can roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nevadas,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Merrick,
Yes.
Mayor, the roll call is 4 yes.
Thank-
3 yeses.
Thank you very much for approval of Resolution 2025-10. Next up is for approval of Resolution 2025-11 for public auction of equipment. Can I have a motion on the floor,
Oh,
please?
so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, seconded by Trustee Johnson Burek. And I will open it up for discussion, if any. You'll notice that they're primarily all vehicles that are inoperable, that we are trying to clean up, if you will. Seeing as there are no questions, Gloria, if you'll roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Merrick,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek,
Yes.
Trustee Nevadas,
Yes.
Mayor, the roll call is 3 yeses.
Great, thank you very much for approval of Resolution 2025-11. Next up is approval of Resolution 2025-12 for capital asset inventory certification.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, seconded by Trustee Johnson Burek. I'll open it up for discussion, if any. And just quick, what you have in front of you is, with all that, is the current inventory with added inventory. It just doesn't have the depletions off of there yet. And then we will have this to you again in the next year. So, because we got to redo all of that. Any questions? Seeing as there are none, Gloria, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nevadas,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Merrick,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek,
Yes.
Mayor, the roll call is 3 yeses.
Thank you very much for approval of Resolution 2025-12 for the capital asset inventory certification. Next up, we have approval of Resolution 2025-13 for the Fire Fund EMS recruiting agreement 24-ZI5036-34.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, seconded by Trustee Johnson Burek. What we have here is the resolution for the recruitment fund for our position, as it was asked to have that by NMFA for the position that we have, the second position that we have within the fire department. Is there any questions? Seeing as there is none, Gloria, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Merrick? Yes. Trustee Nevada?
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek?
Yes.
Mayor, the roll call is 3 yeses.
Thank you very much for approval of resolution 2025-13 for the recruitment agreement for fire fund and EMS. Next on the agenda is approval of resolution 2025-14 for rezone case P&Z case 61870.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Merrick, second by Trustee Johnson Burek. This is the case that we had before us a couple of weeks ago, as I mentioned before. For two of you who are not at the previous meeting, but in that there was a missed call in the record of the vote in that where it was called the motion did not carry, but when indeed given the code because it did not require a 3/4 vote or 2/3 vote of the board, the motion did carry. It just required the approval of the board as it was there. So the minutes were amended and approved to reflect the approval in the last meeting. So what you have here is the resolution specifically for that. Questions?
Okay, again, I wasn't in the rezone. Would I be able to vote?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Gloria, roll call vote. if you
I
would.
do have a question. How would he be allowed to vote if he wasn't at the original meeting when, and even trustee Cadena, who was here at the meeting, who voted, is not here tonight. So trustee Nevadas didn't participate. So how would he be allowed?
It's a formalization of the vote on that as far as it, because it's already been approved by the minutes.
Okay.
So this is just by approval of the minutes, this is just a formalization and ratification of that
Okay,
action taking place for that applicant.
thank you.
And that's
I think
what that is.
refreshes my memory as why we,
Yes.
okay, that's happened before.
So Gloria, if you would roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnson Burek?
I believe I voted no, based on the resolution that was presented, or in the case that, one, it was not in the best interest. I felt it was not in the best interest in the town of Mesilla. And the error in the resolution when it states it was approved by the town in 2007, when the the zoning change was made in 2007, and it wasn't. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Merrick?
Yes.
Trustee Nevada?
Yes.
Mayor, the roll call is 2 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you very much for approval of resolution 2025-14. Next up is public input. This is where we re-invite the public for input on anything else you might like to give input. If you would step to the podium, state your name for the record, please. If there is any public input.
Hi, my name's Pat Taylor, and I was going to comment on a couple of cases tonight. One of them was for the event center wine case, and I was reflecting on being here before the board in April of this year, and I was supporting the preservation of the barn that John Knopf's family has, where they were looking at options of how to deal with a property that will probably change hands after John's generation is gone. And one of the questions they had was the possibility of an event center. And through discussion, the board had heard, they welcomed the preservation of the barn, but they had made mention, y'all had made mention that it wasn't allowed by the code given the zone. There's some similarities with the cases. There's some dissimilarities with the cases, but I just wanted to bring that up so you can reflect on that. You know, consistency is important. I never enjoy seeing the comprehensive plan being brought up and reviewed, because I'm always worried about something might sneak in and change the character of Mesilla. But, we're struggling to keep our green belt as it is. So as our ordinances read, as John Canop realized, he didn't have an option in that regard. So, we need to be consistent and look at all the details of the cases when they come in. The other one was regarding the Don Felix case that was postponed tonight. One of the, and again, reflecting on that property, I think we're dealing with semantics as far as definitions of words. I don't necessarily think that a demolition permit is necessary for that basement building, because it wasn't demolished, it was buried. So, if y'all are going to be rethinking of how that approach is, I one of the things I didn't want to do was see you all get stuck and have it come back again and something come up and then have to come back again. Again, it's that the basement walls are intact underneath all that. It's not necessarily a demolition. So if y'all have questions regarding that part, I don't really think it's applicable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Is there any other public comment this evening? Seeing as there is none, we'll move forward to Board of Trustee Committee reports. Trustee Nevadas. Trustee Johnson Burek.
We have NPO tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. at City Council Chambers.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Same as Trustee Johnson here. Sorry. But other than that, nothing.
Thank you. And we do have MPO tomorrow. We also do have a Friends of the Monument meeting as well at the community center tomorrow afternoon. So hopefully have some good updates from that. And I think it's ironic. I just want to put in, since we're in committee reports and talking about MPO, how the MPO came and presented the JPA at the last meeting, but yet the two members of the MPO, well, two of the three members of the MPO were not present for that. No issues, but I just thought it was ironic on that. Gave Andrew a hard time.
Yeah, I saw that. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, poor Andrew, yeah.
But at any rate, next up, Board of Trustee and staff comments. So we'll start off with the Marshals Department.
Good evening, Board and Mr. Mayor. I feel like I haven't seen you guys in a long time. Busy last couple weeks. We helped with the Halloween Carnival and Haunted House. I had 4 interns out there doing traffic control in the games. The rest of us were handing out candy and taking pictures. I think that was a good turnout and good event overall. Day of the Dead celebration caught us a little off guard with how busy it was. Had some complaints, but nothing major. We'll be a little more prepared next year. This past Saturday, I had 2 deputies in the Veterans Day Parade that went through downtown city of Las Cruces. They said it was a good turnout, good time for them. And then I had another deputy, my ACO codes, and 5 interns at Burgers for Badges. Kind of like a festival just for law enforcement, first responders, Army, military, and their families. The interns did fingerprinting with all the kids. They said that was a hit. They ran out of finger dusting powder and stuff like that. I think we gave away all our goodie bags that we had made. What else? 4 of the 7 cameras are installed in our station as of today. 2 at the front bay, 1 at the front door, and 1 on the southeast corner. Yeah, southeast corner. We still have 1 on the northwest corner, 1 in our booking room, and then 1 for the medical cabinet. Next, they'll do the key card readers. which we'll be able to use an app. And if we lose anyone from my department or the fire department, we don't have to go around hunting for keys anymore. We just remove them from the system. And then after that, it will be the cameras that we are putting up in the plaza. So that'll be a little more secure in the areas where I feel it needs to be secured. Alamo Auto Supply should get the last of our equipment this week. So hopefully the 2 Durangos that myself and Lieutenant Diaz are currently in will start getting outfitted. And then come the new year, I'll be able to order another unit and outfit it with monies we got from up in Santa Fe. Newest deputy, Ivan Chacon, is doing really good. He has a couple more days with Lieutenant Diaz, but he'll be on his own on Sunday, swing shift. You'll see him out there. He's in a Durango. And working on an active shooter training for all the school employees. Myself, Sergeant SRO Hernandez, and SRO Charles Boylston will be presenting that one here shortly. And I think that's it on my end. Stand for any questions, concerns, complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
We're watching glass for you too. Don't worry. Have a good one.
Public Works.
Good evening, board. I don't really have anything, but I will stand by for questions if you got anything on our ongoing projects that have just been ongoing.
So you got a lot going on. I don't know what you don't have anything. Picacho's underway.
Picacho is underway. They got all the utilities going in, fire hydrants, new sewer lines, water lines, manholes, so they've jumped over and demolished quite a bit of that road already. So that's going on. I'll update you. They did restart doing the repaving of Avenida Misia Highway 28 through a new company. So they projected it's only gonna take 7 days, for it to complete, and a few more days, maybe possibly, just to get it restriped, and then also to redo some more manholes and water valves that were not done because they still need the existing paving to get redone. But other than that, I think we're good. Questions?
I think other notes, just real quick on that, is that to just piggyback off you, is that the light reviewed, because I'm sure a lot of light, it is a DOT light and spoken on that they're in the process of fixing, and specifically that by the time this repaving project on Avenida is complete, that we should have that light back into working position. We also have the university project that is getting ready to start on the 26th of this month, so right after our Thanksgiving holiday, and that will be starting on the west end. So we should be
Correct.
posting the traffic plan on the website here very soon as well. Questions?
That's one question I had, if you had information on the start date, because it'll affect my route to the university. So I'll find another way. Which brings me to Calle Picacho. Do you have an idea of the timeframe that's left to complete?
It's projected for the end of February, but pending no hiccups, that should be the projection completion date to it.
I have a follow-up question, Calle Picacho, because there were discussions about, excessive speed and how to manage it. I think there was a comment by some residents that said they wanted to see speed bumps. Are there any, has that been taken into consideration to how to manage speed on that street in particular?
Yes, we had we have discussed traffic study that goes through Picacho and various other different locations. So yes, that has been discussed, and we'll bring that forward to the NMDOT to see, how we can get that studied and reviewed.
Because that's one of the streets that's kind of straight away, and then people tend to pick up speed on
Yes, sir.
and other streets too around.
Mhm.
That's one of them that, because I had the discussion early on about, having some kind of a traffic calming device.
Right.
Manage that. So,
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think to touch on that as well for you, Trustee Navarez, one of the things that I ran upon that we're looking at to help out with that, and it's something that can be utilized by the Marshal's Department, is I'm sure you've seen going on Calle del Sur during in the school zone. There's the flashing light that shows your current speed. There is one that I'm looking at potentially getting that is a cloud-based one that actually catches the speed of the vehicle. It won't take a picture of it for those purposes, but it'll at least capture the speed so that we can fully have that, and that'll be something that can be mobile to move around. That'll ultimately help the Marshal's Department with in determining speed, safety, and so on and so forth. So that is something that we are looking at.
That's a good idea too. So thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right. Economic development. Here we go.
Mr. Lorenzo stole my line. I really don't have much to report other than I did take note of your requests as far as the cases and such. I would do like to comment that I feel pretty comfortable with the commission that we have now. They're very communicative. So anytime there's a packet that's put out there, if there is before the meeting, there are some concerns. They asked me to look those things up before the meeting so I can present it. And I would like to also request that to the trustees, if you do get the packets, if you do review it, if there are some concerns that you all have, that I might do my homework to make sure that you do have to 100% agree. You do have to have all the information you need to make the right decisions. But if you do get those and you do find yourself questioning some things, please feel free to either email or stop by my office. I'll be more than happy to get you that information. Other than that, just working on cases, and that's all I have for now.
We're gonna have more than that going on.
Well, right now at this time, I'm focusing on the cases that we have at hand.
So we will have short-term rental ordinance has been passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that my intention is probably to call a special meeting next week for a work session for us to specifically work on this and have that work session before we have our public hearing at our next meeting specifically for the ordinance. And then we'll probably have another work session after that public hearing, depending upon your feelings of that before we fully move forward with codification of said ordinance and getting that taken care of. We also are doing interviews for our historic preservation position this week. So hopefully the next time that we meet, we might have an applicant to move forward for you for consideration. On top of everything else that you have going on.
Thank you. Any questions?
Questions for economic development?
Yeah, I appreciate that you're offering to provide us information when we find that there might be something that's. I also appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Items come forward. I know it's not easy. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Salazar? Thank you, sir. Finance.
We're moving forward. We're still waiting on the auditors, but we're making progress.
I think that with Gloria as well, with the audit, we've had some good things going, but we do know that we will have some findings. Nothing, knock on wood, I don't want to say that, nothing too crazy, but things that are just processes and systems to put in place that will really ensure accountability moving forward on all that. But it's good stuff. And then you go to conference next week for budget conference.
That's when you're gonna have that workshop.
We'll look at Monday or Tuesday. Well, Monday's Eddie's meeting, so maybe Tuesday in the earlier afternoon. Possibly. We'll see. Got to look at the court schedule. We'll talk. Anything else? Sorry. All right. But fire's not here. Unfortunately, they did go out on a call. As you saw, they all got up and left. Fire chief actually just sent me a message saying that they were trying to head back as well, but they have started the construction on Avenida, so a majority of the roads are blocked. So heads up on that as you're leaving this evening, because those roads are going to be blocked. So you might have to look for alternate ways. But this construction company should be working with everybody a little bit closer and in a much nicer way as well than our previous construction company. But we have that. And I will say that if you didn't see the new ambulance that came in the last time, it's a beauty. I highly recommend you seeing that. And I know that team is extremely proud of that piece of equipment. And I think as a community, we should be proud of that. We do have if you are available for the public as well, next Monday, and as well as trustees, on the 18th at 2:00 at the fire station, that we will have the mayor from Albuquerque coming down, along with his fire chief, because they are bringing an ambulance that was procured by our fire department, as it was stated the last time, that they're donating to the town. So Mayor Keller will be here to help with that. We're going to be sending out media notification on that and getting that information out. So to anybody that's available, please swing by for that little celebration, if you will, at 2:00 on Monday afternoon. So I know Chief is excited about that as well. All right. We'll move on to trustee comments. Trustee Nevada's.
I just had a question, because I think I mentioned before, but now that they're working on Highway 28 through here, and questions about a red light on demand in the crosswalk in front of the town hall. Is there any updates on that?
So that's a question that we can ask again tomorrow at our MPO meeting. I know the last time that I brought that up at MPO, I was caught after the meeting specifically by Mr. Chavria, who works for DOT. And he said that he did have a hawk, which is that flashing light that we were going to have put in here. But unfortunately, due to the accidents and incidents that have been happening at the corner of Snow and 28, that hawk got placed down there rather than being placed down here. So they are potentially looking at what it's going to cost to procure another one in doing that as well. On another note on that, for the university project, while I'm thinking about it, because I don't think we talked about it, with the intersection at Union and 28, that's going to be a more highly utilized intersection, especially given the upcoming project that's happening on University after the end of this month. And I did make a request to DOT to specifically look at very minimally review all of that, but also look at the potential of putting a temporary four-way stop in just to help with getting traffic flow through there in the interim. So they are considering that, and we'll be taking a look at that and the potential. But the more that they hear that from everybody, the better off that we are for anything like that.
At one time you had mentioned that traffic light there, but you're not gonna.
So that DOT will review that and the possibility of a traffic light going there. But unfortunately, that review and traffic study will not be completed until after the university project is fully completed, because the numbers will be skewed with the traffic that is going through that area presently. Anything else? No? Trustee Johnson Burek.
Sorry. Few things. Thank you for, I didn't have the opportunity to watch the meeting when I was out of town. So thank you for the explanation, because I was really bothered that we didn't do the right thing regarding the vote that I brought up. So I'm gonna make sure I make time to watch that meeting. I get frustrated, obviously, when these cases are brought forward and the applications are all over the page. Again, we should not be interpreting ordinances as a way to modernize them. We need to fix them and put them in writing, because we have to follow the ordinances, mostly because of liability issues. Concerned about many of you out there know that I do enjoy my wine, so I would love nothing else than to have a winery. But I'm concerned about going forward. I'm thinking of the future, how this is going to impact those properties, those zones that are already RA and RF. We have to be cautious. Again, I am here to make sure that we follow the ordinances and we protect our community and our residents and preserve what we have. My apologies to Mr. Armijo for yet again delaying this project, or this case, sorry. So hopefully within the next meeting, we will no longer have to postpone it and we can make a decision. I don't know if anyone else saw on the national news, I think it was last week, it was on CBS, about the problems that historical communities are having with STRs, the amount of STRs going up in their communities, and the integrity in the historical ambiance being affected by the number. And it's now being common in the one case they cited, they mentioned several communities, but they pinpointed a community, a town in Maryland, that, and they did state how communities that were impacted by STRs in the significant number were putting in place, I'm so tired, sorry, putting in place ordinances that limit the number of STRs to, so that their communities and the historical impact will not be negatively impacted. And then lastly, was able to attend the Veterans Day ceremony yesterday, which is one of my most special events that I enjoy, that the town puts on, and the mayor and staff did a great job. So thank you. So, and thank you to all of our veterans. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson Burek. Mayor Pro Tem Merrick.
I lost my train of thought. I wasn't here last meeting, but me and my daughter went to the Halloween carnival. That was a lot of fun. They did really good. There was a ton of kid activities, in all ranges of children, actually. I was really surprised. There was a ton of teenagers that went out and bought candy. I know a lot of our staff was there. Our Marshall interns were there doing the games with the children. It was a great event. There was a lot of people there. It was a lot of fun. Dia de los Muertos, like they said, traffic was kind of crazy. But it's a nationally recognized event now, which is great. Except we got rained out on Sunday. And then I missed the veterans yesterday for the first time. But as you can hear my voice, I wasn't going. We have a ton of veterans, Trustee Johnson Burek's husband, a ton in our Marshals department, including our Marshal, a ton in our fire department, including our chief. So we have some really great veterans in our community. Be sure to thank them, and thank you guys for everything you guys done and continue to do, especially those in our first responders. What else? I think that's all I've got. I can't really think right now. I'm so tired.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Our Veterans Day celebration was definitely, I think it was a good one, and we had a really good turnout with people coming out to it. Our keynote speaker was a veteran who works with Homeland Security presently, and he gave some really good insight and information and a good talk overall, and I thought that was phenomenal. One of the things that I did mention to a couple of people at the celebration yesterday, because just as Mayor Pro Tem has pointed out, is that within our own team we have a lot of members of the veteran community within the town employees, but more importantly within our own constituency base and residency, we have a lot of veterans. So moving forward with the Veterans Day celebration, I'm making it a point that keynote speakers for future Veterans Day celebrations will be of residents of the town, so that we can actually celebrate our residents who have served and done wonderful things. I appreciate everybody that has served on that sense. As it's also been mentioned, the Halloween celebration or fall carnival was great. We spread it out a little bit more than we normally do. We're evaluating these as we kind of what it looks like with it's a little bit more spread out. Might not do that exact same thing next year. We'll evaluate it fully for all of these events. Dia Los Muertos did the same thing and spread out a little bit more down two of the side streets, similar to how we did for Diez y Seis. And they had a great turnout. Everybody that I spoke with there, vendor-wise, as well as the brick and mortar businesses, were having good business coming in, which is phenomenal. That's exactly what we want, and good recognition for the town. And the altars were great. My kids even said that they wanted to do an altar next year, so let's see what that looks like. A little concerned with that, but let's see. One thing that I didn't mention earlier with a talk on kind of committee reports is we did have an ad hoc committee recently, and thank you for those members that are present that are part of that ad hoc committee. And that ad hoc committee is for the arts and culture ad hoc, and that's specifically where we're talking about. Presently, we're looking at signage because we do have signage that is grant funding that's been allocated for that. So we're looking at the areas of where to use that signage. We're looking at the ordinances as far as it pertains to murals, sculptures, and what that can possibly look like. And then I did make an ask of the committee specifically in this last meeting. If they would also take into consideration actually helping out, since we're reviewing signs right now and looking at signs for the town, if we can review the sign ordinance as a whole and see how we can benefit that review there to help to support the businesses as well as being streamlined with consistency, because that is one of the cases that we heard at our last meeting where we weren't being consistent with everything. And I think there's a little bit of consistency that we can have going on there. So I appreciate those individuals for helping out with that. As I mentioned in the last meeting as well, we're looking at having our website rebuilt, which hopefully I'll have those quotes in or estimates and proposals in this next week, so that the next meeting I can bring that for approval to the board. One of the big things that I think that will be great that I'm really looking at in the website is because we will have the cameras that are on the plaza specifically, and while they typically will serve the public safety sector, in that the goal is to actually have a live stream that can live stream what's going on in the plaza in specific at all times of the day, so that's duly accessed, if you will. And having that, I think that would be great during events in particular. But we'll have that live. So if you want to check out a website that has a live stream that is another municipality across the state, take a look at Red River's website in specific. That's kind of a website that I personally like, in a direction of where we might take this website. So I highly recommend that. But really separating out where we have visitors facing part of the website, and then a residents facing part of the website. So it's broken out completely on the two. And then of course having all of our public safety, public works, economic development, everything completely broken out by department, so that we can have updates that are going on and keeps everybody fully informed. That's the goal on that. And then hopefully, not this next meeting, but probably the meeting after, we will hopefully have a rollout for the My Messia app is the goal, to see what we can do there. So I know we've been waiting on it, but it's coming. And with that, if there is no other comments or concerns, I will call this meeting as adjourned. Thank you.